The lights flare to life. The house band hits a bold brass note that vibrates through the studio floor, and the crowd rises before they even know why. Jimmy Kimmel leans forward, voice riding the wave of noise like a surfer on a crest. Our first guest tonight, a movie star among movie stars. He's back with his 5th Spike Lee collaboration. Please welcome Denzel Washington. Applause detonates. 1,000 hands crash together in rhythm, the sound swelling like a living thing. The door at stage right opens, and there he is. Denzel steps out with that unhurried walk, calm but electric. Every movement feels measured, deliberate, as if time itself stretches to match his stride. He stops at the edge of the light, hands in his pockets, chin high. The audience keeps clapping, shouting, cheering his name. The energy peaks, then falters. He doesn't move. He doesn't wave. He just stands there solid, still, centered, and suddenly the roar starts to break apart. The applause fades, but he's still standing, smiling slightly, waiting for silence to meet him halfway. The room adjusts around him. The sound techs glance at one another. Jimmy's grin flickers, half awe, half discomfort. He wasn't expecting this, the pause that bends the tempo, the way one man's stillness can command a crowd better than any punchline. The camera shifts closer. Denzel's eyes catch the lens like it's an old friend he's letting in on a secret. The light finds him perfectly. It always does. Finally, he moves one step, then another, and the crowd bursts again, grateful for release. He shakes Jimmy's hand, firm and easy, then drops into the guest chair. Jimmy laughs, recovering his rhythm. "Wow," he says, mock exhaling. "You bring your own standing ovation, huh?" Denzel glances toward the crowd, then back at him. "What can I say?" He replies, low and steady. "They're good people." More laughter. The sound feels lighter now, safer, but there's a current running underneath it, an invisible shift. The kind of tension that makes everyone sit a little straighter without knowing why. Jimmy gestures to the audience, trying to reassert the tempo. "You're taking over my show already, huh?" He jokes, pointing. Denzel's smile widens just enough to answer without words. The air hums again, balanced between laughter and something quieter, heavier. He doesn't just enter the room. The room bends around him. Jimmy leans forward, the corners of his smile catching the studio light. "So tell me," he says, still riding the aftershock of the entrance, "does this kind of thing happen everywhere you go? People just stand up and start clapping?" Laughter rolls through the audience again, bright and easy. Denzel looks around, lets it hang for a moment, then shakes his head with that slow, knowing grin. "Sometimes," he says, "but I like to keep a couple of them in the trunk, pull them out when I need applause." The crowd howls. Jimmy laughs, tapping the desk. "You actually could. I'd believe it." Denzel waits, just a beat longer than natural. The laughter keeps going, but he holds his gaze steady, eyes sweeping the room, calm as a conductor. When he finally smiles again, the laughter breaks on his timing, not the jokes. He has them, every one of them. Jimmy gestures at him. "Man, you make it look easy. I heard you even got your hair cut today, C2's barbershop, right? He told me you used to stop by." Denzel's face softens with memory. "Yeah, that's right. C2 and Burger, those were my guys." He chuckles quietly. "You'd walk in there and lose 3 hours talk, laugh, argue about life, sports, whatever. Didn't matter who you were. If you sat in that chair, you were just one of the fellas." The audience laughs again, the kind that comes from familiarity. Denzel nods, half smiling. "Those barbers, man, they know everything about everybody. They could run the government if they wanted." Jimmy smirks, sensing an opening. "Well, I guess you don't have to worry about that now. You probably have people for everything these days, right? Drivers, assistants, professional hairbrushers." Laughter flickers again, lighter this time. Denzel doesn't join in immediately. He lets the sound rise, then fade, eyes fixed on Jimmy with a calm so effortless it's almost disarming. When he finally speaks, his voice drops lower, steadier. "Once," he says, "I used to sweep hair for a living." The laughter stops. Not awkward, just still. The crowd feels it shift, the truth cutting through the warmth like a clean note in the middle of a song. Denzel leans back, relaxed, as if he's just told a simple fact, nothing more. Jimmy nods slowly, smile softening, realizing what just happened. Denzel lets the silence breathe, then lifts the mood again with a small grin. Good practice, though. Teaches you patience. You miss a spot, they'll let you know. The crowd laughs again, a different kind of laugh, gentler, almost grateful. The tension unwinds, but leaves a trace behind, a quiet reminder of weight under the charm. The light shifts warmer, the music cue hums faintly in the background. Denzel looks down, thoughtful, fingers tapping the armrest in rhythm. The next story waits behind his eyes, something older, heavier, and for the first time tonight, the audience leans in, ready to listen rather than cheer. The crowd is still smiling when Denzel leans forward, voice dropping into something quieter, rougher around the edges. You know, he says, people think you start out in Hollywood, and that's it. Lights, cameras, applause. But my first job wasn't acting. I was a garbage man. A few surprised laughs scatter through the audience. He doesn't return them. His tone stays calm, almost rhythmic, like he's telling an old story that still lives somewhere in his muscles. Back then, it was metal cans, he says, his hand curling slightly in the air, miming the weight. You'd grab one, bang it against the side of the truck. Asterisk clang. Asterisk. Then another. Asterisk. Clang. Asterisk. Over and over. That sound, I still hear it sometimes. The word echoes in the studio, quiet but sharp. Asterisk, clang, asterisk. A laugh starts, then dies halfway through. He continues, steady, almost hypnotic. We'd roll out early, streets still dark, air cold. Me and this old Italian guy Popeye Arms sang to himself the whole time. He'd say, kid, you hit it hard for 3 hours, you get your day back. He was right. 8-hour shift, but if you moved fast, if you hustled, you could be done in 3. He pauses, a half-smile flickering. Only thing is, I didn't know how to pace myself. By the end of the shift, my arms would lock up. Couldn't lift a sandwich, couldn't even raise a glass. You just sit there, sweat drying on you, listening to that truck engine idle. The audience is silent now, drawn in. Denzel's voice lowers another notch, softer but firm. But that's where I learned rhythm. Not music, not acting, time's work. Asterisk, the kind that teaches you how to breathe, how to keep your head down and your focus up. You move too fast, you burn out. Too slow, you get left behind. He smiles faintly, looking toward the crowd but seeing something far away. You start to hear your own beat in that noise. The clang, the grind, the motion of it all, it stays with you. A hush settles over the studio. Jimmy watches him carefully, like he's forgotten there's an audience. Denzel glances over, eyes narrowing just a little, warmth returning. Funny thing, he says, when you've lifted steel for a living, words don't scare you. The line lands like a low drum hit. It isn't a boast, it's a fact, worn smooth by time. The applause that follows is small at first, then builds, but Denzel just nods through it, unbothered. He leans back again, body loose, voice lighter now. That job taught me something else, he adds. You find your rhythm in the work, you keep it. Doesn't matter what kind of work it is. He pauses, then lets a small laugh escape. So when people start talking football politics, I just breathe. I've seen heavier things than that. The audience laughs again, the sound warmer this time, not out of amusement, but admiration. The tension that had crept in dissolves into something gentler, almost reverent. Jimmy grins, shaking his head. Man, he says, I'd watch a whole movie of just you telling stories like that. Denzel shrugs, eyes glinting under the light. That's life, brother. You live long enough, the stories start telling themselves. The laughter that follows feels earned, like a release after a long silence. Somewhere under the applause, if you listen closely, you can almost hear it faint and distant, the sound of metal cans hitting steel, keeping rhythm with the heartbeat of a man who never forgot where he came from. Asterisk clang. Asterisk asterisk clang. Asterisk. The room feels softer now, the laughter rolling easy, the tension from before melting into warmth. Jimmy smiles, resting his elbows on the desk. So you went from garbage routes to Hollywood sets. There's gotta be a few jobs in between. Denzel chuckles. That quiet, smoky laugh. Oh, there were plenty. One of my favorites? A restaurant gig in San Francisco place called Time's Salma Gundy's 31 Soups. Asterisk, I was in grad school at the time, broke, hungry, and smart enough to know that if I worked around food, I'd never starve. The crowd laughs, and Denzel nods, eyes glinting. You could smell the soups from outside: tomato bisque, chicken noodle, clam chowder, you name it. I'd stand behind that counter ladling soup, pretending I was in character. Only difference was, I was acting hungry because I was times hungry. Jimmy laughs with him, shaking his head. So, all that time studying theater, and your first real performance was serving soup? Denzel grins. Exactly, and it paid off. That's where I learned to serve with presence. The audience laughs again, but he keeps the rhythm steady. Then I booked my first TV movie about Wilma Rudolph. Met my wife that same summer. Been together ever since. That's my favorite script of all time. The applause comes naturally, a few people cheering. The lights seem warmer now, honey-colored across his face. Denzel leans back, voice gentler. Love's easy when you don't argue, he says with that half smile that feels like truth. That's how you survive. The crowd reacts with a soft wave of laughter, touched but calm. There's a pause, the kind that lets the audience sit with something good before it fades. Jimmy looks at him, amused. You make it sound simple. Denzel shrugs. It is, if you know when to stay quiet. A beat of silence follows, delicate, content. The moment feels full, like the show has found its rhythm again. Then Jimmy tilts his head, that mischievous grin, returning. Speaking of loyalty, he says slowly, narrowing his eyes. You're still a Cowboys fan, right? The laughter flickers, uneasy this time. Denzel's smile doesn't fade, but the air in the room shifts, temperature dropping by degrees. The band's faint background note fades out. The lights cool from gold to white. He straightens a little, the calm's still there, but underneath it, something else begins to move. The warmth drains from the room like someone cracked a window in winter. Jimmy holds the smile, but his eyes sharpen. You're still a Cowboys fan, right? He says, casual on the surface, fishing line hidden under the foam. The crowd stirs, a few cheers, a few groans, the way a room splits when football becomes confession. Denzel doesn't blink. He lets the silence lengthen by a breath. The pause lands. Jimmy leans into it, soft at first, testing the ice. Do you feel Jerry Jones is doing a good job running the team? The question floats out with a late-night grin attached, but it isn't a joke. It has edges. The audience gives a polite laugh, then realizes it's not a punchline, then quiets. Denzel's smile stays easy, controlled. He turns his head slightly, measuring the beat like he's cueing a band. Boy, he says, smooth as glass. Let me tell you times. Highest to lowest times is a great movie. That's what I feel. Laughter erupts sharp, grateful, released all at once, but not everyone laughs. Some people gasp, some whistle, some clap, because they know what just happened. He slid the blade right back into the sheath without drawing blood. Jimmy chuckles, but his eyes say game on. He tries again, pushing a fraction harder, the tease turning into a test. Do you miss Micah Parsons? Do you think that was a good idea? A few people in the front row murmur. Others sit forward, hungry. This is the kind of moment late night lives for a clean headline if the guest slips. Denzel doesn't slip. He watches the room instead, clocking the angles. He lets the chuckles fade. Keep going, he says lightly, inviting the shot while removing the target. Jimmy nods. Obliged. People in Dallas are pretty upset about it, he adds, leaning on the phrase, pretty upset. The camera cuts to the audience, a man in a Cowboys hoodie, a woman covering her mouth, laughter paused like a held breath. Jimmy grins at Denzel, friendly but surgical. And I have a feeling if we had a polygraph, we'd find you're very upset too. And then the room goes silent. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear a single hand stop halfway to a clap. Somewhere, far behind the lights, the ghost of a metal can hits a truck times clang times, a memory more than a sound. Denzel tilts his head, not offended, not rattled. His voice lowers, as if he's dropping the volume to make everyone listen closer. I'm officially going to stay in my corner, he says, each word placed carefully on velvet. Because I've come to realize people aren't interested in what I say, they're interested in how they can use it. The line lands like a soft hammer, a heartbeat of pure quiet. Then the crowd breaks laughter, applause, a few whoops, but underneath it, there's that hum, that recognition. He didn't dodge, he defined the ring. Jimmy's smile returns, larger, comedy forward, trying to keep the air light. All right, he says, palms up. But you were listening to the sports shows this morning, right? Denzel nods, amused, letting the rope play through his fingers without grabbing it. I was. They were asking how good he is against the run. He shrugs. I hadn't thought about that. Jimmy jumps. Not according to the guy who was talking, he says, quick. The crowd laughs. It's safe now, safer at least, because Denzel has set the rules. Denzel leans back, the chair creaking, almost theatrically. I'm not very upset. He says, light, deliberate. I've been a Cowboys fan since 1966. He lets the date sit there, collecting dust and authority. Someone whistles. He gestures lazily with one hand, drawing a route in the air. Back when I was a kid, at the boys' club, we were the Red Raiders. We had this shift we'd do before the snap. Here. His hand drifts to the left. Then up. Then down. He smiles at the memory. Dallas did that in those days. They shifted like us. I said, they shift just like us. That's what got me. The crowd laughs, softer now, charmed by the specificity, charmed by the boy and the man, telling them why he chose a team in the first place. The camera finds his face in profile, the grin that makes time feel measured and generous. Jimmy nods, playing the partner again, not the prosecutor. Who was your favorite player back then? Denzel's eyes lift, searching shelves only he can see. Giants had home, he starts, then stops himself, laughing. Anybody black? The audience laughs with him, already on board before he corrects. No, that's not even true. There was Walt Garrison. He snaps his fingers, coming up empty on others. I was a running back, so I was looking at those guys. Jimmy's grin returns to its mischievous setting. You know there are 4 players named Denzel in the NFL right now? Denzel smiles. I know. Jimmy raises his eyebrows. Before your first Oscar? There were 0. Not a single Denzel in 1987. You've dominated the name category. The audience laughs, claps. Denzel's smile thins, playful but precise. My name's not pronounced times, Denzel, asterisk. He gestures between an imaginary pair. I'm Denzel Jr. My father is Denzel Hayes Washington Sr. My mother would say Denzel and we'd both show up, so she said, from now on, you're Denzel. He taps the chair once, locking it in. That's how it got pronounced. Laughter again, easy, grateful for the reprieve, but the duel isn't forgotten. It just breathes through comedy. Jimmy glances down at his cards, then back up with the friendly needle. There ought to be some kind of compensation for all those jerseys, right? Denzel chuckles. There ought to be, he says, giving the crowd what they want, then letting it go before it turns into a headline. Jimmy senses the opening and tests the fence one last time. Gentle pressure, nothing sharp. So, he says, no thoughts on Jerry? On any of it? Denzel's eyes settle, rain going calm on glass. The smile returns warmer, but the words stay cool. I'm staying in my corner, he repeats, with the ease of a man who already won the round. Because people aren't interested in what I say, only how they can use it. There's that heartbeat again, the micro-silence. A single frame of stillness where you can feel the room decide to respect the boundary instead of press it. Then the release applause, laughter, the kind that has relief mixed with admiration. If you listen, beneath the noise, there's the faintest echo not from the studio, but from some old morning on a city street times clang asterisk. The sound of weight meeting steel, the sound of a man who learned his rhythm before the world learned his name. Jimmy exhales, palms open in mock surrender. All right, he says, grin widening. Okay. Let's talk about something you can't get in trouble for. He taps the desk twice, resetting the tempo. Music. The audience cheers louder than before, almost too eager to change the subject, and Denzel's posture shifts by a degree you can barely see. Shoulder loosens, chin dips. The air warms a notch. Jimmy leans in. Because I heard a story about you and a certain rapper, and maybe a little freestyle? Denzel's eyes light with a different heat, not the hard light of scrutiny, but the easy heat of a stage. He nods once, like a drummer counting in the band. You want to talk pressure? He says, voice dropping into a grin. Let's talk rhythm. The crowd roars. Just like that, the duel dissolves into a dance. But the victory stays where it landed, neat, clean, undeniable. He never raised his voice. He never took the bait. He didn't storm out of the moment or the seat. He walked out of the trap and took the room with him. Jimmy chuckles, glancing at the band, already cueing a groove. Okay, he says. Now we're talking. He turns back, tapping the card against the desk in a beat he thinks he's leading. And for once he might be right because Denzel has decided it's safe to let him. The audience leans forward again, tension washed into anticipation, the room's temperature rising back to performance levels. And if the metal echo still lingers, if that old times clang times keeps perfect time behind the laughter, it only sweetens what comes next. The work taught him pace, the silence gave him control, now the music will let him fly. The tension has turned to rhythm now. The crowd feels at first that shift in air pressure when something unexpected is about to happen. Jimmy leans forward, eyes bright again. I heard you've got bars, he says, grinning. Something about freestyling on set? Denzel chuckles, deep and smooth, that low sound that already owns the next few seconds. You want to talk pressure? He says, voice dropping into that signature calm. Let's talk rhythm. The crowd cheers. The band hits a faint backbeat, just enough to make the room sway. Denzel straightens, nodding once to the tempo only he seems to hear. Then, without preamble, he begins. I'm the brutalizer, the Buddhizer, the accelerator, he says, rolling through the words like they've been living in his lungs for years. His delivery is clean, surgical. I ain't the type that be pissing in your elevator, but sometimes the rap game remind me of the crap game. The crowd gasps, then bursts into applause. Jimmy's hands fly up, laughing. Denzel doesn't flinch, he keeps going, feeding off their energy, every line sharper than the one before. I used to sport Bally's and Gazelles with black frames, but now I'm in the new chicks, texts, and Becks. Come on, represent. The audience claps in rhythm, finding the beat, caught between disbelief and euphoria. For a few moments, it's not a talk show anymore, it's a cipher. The man who just dismantled a question with silence is now commanding the room with sound. Denzel stops abruptly, letting the last word hang, and the place erupts. Jimmy laughs so hard he's nearly out of breath. Okay, he manages. Okay, hold on. You just dropped that off the top of your head? Denzel grins, cool and humble. Full disclosure, he says, hand raised in mock surrender. I stole that from Nas. Song called Represent. Laughter floods the studio, pure release. The applause rolls like thunder, louder than any cue light could ask for. He sits back, letting it wash over him, the master of his own tempo again. Jimmy shakes his head, pretending to look wounded. Man, you can't just pull out Nas lyrics like that on live TV. You're making me look bad. Denzel laughs with him, shoulders relaxing, eyes glinting under the lights. Hey, he says, I told you, I'm staying in my corner. The crowd howls at the callback, remembering the duel from minutes ago. Jimmy leans in, still smiling, but curious. You ever actually rap for real? Denzel nods, thoughtful. Yeah. Used to DJ when I was a kid, 12, 13 years old. Had my own turntables. Music was my first hustle. His hand taps the armrest like a record spinning. Once you find that groove, you never lose it. Same as acting, it's all timing. The lights seem to pulse softer now, a golden hue warming the edges of the set. The tension from earlier has vanished completely, replaced by that collective buzz that comes when everyone in the room knows they've just seen something rare. Jimmy glances at the camera, playing to the crowd. You know what? We need a collaboration. You, me, and maybe Lenny Kravitz? Denzel laughs, shaking his head. Don't tempt me. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone. Let's see if we can get him right now. The audience explodes again, half disbelief, half anticipation. Jimmy waves his hands, laughing. Wait, are you actually? But Denzel's already tapping the screen. The phone lights up. FaceTime ringing. One ring, two. Then a voice smooth, familiar. Yo. The crowd gasps. The screen fills with Lenny Kravitz, fresh out of the shower, towel over his shoulders, grin easy and bright. The room goes feral. Hey, Lenny, Denzel says into the phone, grin wide. We're on Jimmy's show. You decent? Lenny laughs, deep and melodic. Barely, man. Jimmy throws his head back, laughing. This is insane. Denzel just sits there, cool as ever, letting the chaos spin around him. You want to say hi to your fans, brother? Lenny waves at the camera, muscles glinting under the lights. The audience screams again. Denzel glances at Jimmy. Told you, it's all about rhythm. Lenny chuckles. You two behave, he says, and hangs up. The phone goes dark, and for a heartbeat, the studio just hums alive, electric, perfectly balanced. Denzel sets the phone down, the faintest smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. Jimmy shakes his head, still laughing. Man, he says, you just broke the internet. The laughter swells again, but this time it's soft around the edges, not hysteria, but admiration. Denzel sits back, still in total control, letting the moment breathe. The lights dim slightly, the applause fading into a low, warm thrum. He's done exactly what he came to do, turn tension into music, pressure into performance. And as the energy begins to settle, you can feel it, that sense of completion, of calm after a storm well played. The beat slows, the crowd exhales, and somewhere in that hush between laughter and applause, the rhythm that started it all begins to fade. The studio still hums from the laughter when Jimmy finally leans back, catching his breath. Denzel Washington, everybody, he says, voice breaking into that host's rhythm again, trying to close the loop. The applause rises on cue, but this time it sounds different, fuller, heavier, more like respect than noise. Denzel stands slowly, not rushing the moment. He straightens his jacket, nods once toward Jimmy, then toward the crowd that's still on its feet. The cameras adjust, the lights halo around him. He waves once, just enough. Jimmy says something, a final thank you that fades under the roar. Denzel doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He steps back from the chair, turns toward the edge of the stage. For a second, it's just the sound of clapping hands, the faint echo of drums from the band, and underneath it, barely there, a memory, asterisk clang. Asterisk, the old rhythm of steel on steel. He walks out steady, unhurried, the same way he came in. The crowd keeps clapping even after he's gone, because they can still feel him there in the light, in the air, in the silence that follows. He doesn't storm out, he glides into legend.